I'm 83 years old, and for most of the last 20-something years, I woke up tired. Not the kind of tired where you yawn and stretch, and then you're fine. I mean the kind where your eyes open and your first thought is, already? Already I have to do this again? I blamed it on my age. I told myself that this is just what happens when you've been on the planet long enough. I figured my body was sending me a bill, a very long, very expensive bill, for all those decades of hard living. But I was wrong, completely wrong. It wasn't my age draining me, it was a set of habits, 7 of them, that were poking holes in my energy every single day. Little drips. You don't notice each one individually, but add them all up, and by noon you're running on empty. I call them my dripping vessel habits, and the day I started patching those holes, I got myself back. A version of me I genuinely thought was gone forever. Let me walk you through every single one. Habit number 1, mental clutter. Load. The first hole, and this one shocked me, wasn't physical at all. It was mental clutter, the stuff piling up inside my head that I never dealt with. I'm talking about the drawer in the kitchen you've been meaning to go through for 2 years, the phone call you keep putting off, the thing you said to someone 10 years ago that you never went back and apologized for, the project sitting half-finished in the garage, the boxes from the move you made 4 years ago that are still taped shut in the spare room. Every single one of those things is an open loop, and open loops cost energy. They sit in the back of your brain like programs running in the background on a computer, quietly, constantly, eating up memory and power. I didn't realize this until I made myself sit down one afternoon and write out every unfinished thing in my life. Not to finish them all, that wasn't possible, but to make a decision about each one. Some things I finished, some things I asked for help with, and some things I had to look at honestly and say, that's not going to happen, and that's okay. That last part was hard. Letting go of things you once cared about takes something out of a man, but what it gave back was worth it. The day I cleared that mental clutter, truly cleared it, not just shuffled it around, I felt lighter in a way that's hard to describe, and that heaviness I'd been carrying showed up in my body every morning. Once it was gone, I started waking up different. If you've got a long list of some days piling up in your head, that list is costing you more than you know. Habit number 2, energy-draining relationships. Now this next one, I want you to really sit with this one, because it's the one most people resist the most. Over the years, I'd built up a circle of people around me. Some of them were wonderful, but some of them, and I say this without judgment, had quietly become a drain on me. Every time I spent time with certain people, the conversation went the same direction. Complaints, old grudges, worry about things nobody could fix, the same stories on a loop. And every time I walked away from those conversations, I felt like I'd been worked over. Not because anything bad happened, just because I'd spent an hour or two absorbing someone else's weight. I want to be clear about something. Being there for someone who's going through something real, that's not what I'm talking about. Sitting with a friend through a genuinely hard time, that's what men do for each other. That's not draining. That's what we're here for. I'm talking about the pattern. The person who doesn't actually want things to get better. They just want someone to listen to the same complaint for the 500th time. When I got honest about who left me energized and who left me depleted, I had to make some adjustments. Quietly. No drama, no big speeches. I just started spending more of my limited time and energy with people who made me curious about what comes next. The difference in how I felt day to day was not subtle. At 83, your energy is not unlimited. Neither is mine. Who you give it to matters more than most people ever tell you. Habit number 3, hidden inflammation drain. All right, this one is the one that surprised me the most. because I genuinely thought I was eating well. I wasn't eating badly, not by any obvious measure. But what I didn't understand is that at 83, my body has become much more sensitive than it was at 50 or 60. Things my system used to handle without complaint were now quietly causing inflammation. Low-level, constant, invisible inflammation. And inflammation costs energy, a lot of it. Your body is fighting a battle around the clock, and nobody told you the battle was even happening. Think about it this way. If you put the wrong fuel in an engine, the engine doesn't just stop. It keeps running, but it runs rough. It works harder. It burns through energy faster. That was me. I started paying closer attention to how I felt a few hours after eating certain things. I simplified. I cut out a lot of the processed stuff, the hidden sugars, the foods that felt fine going in but left me foggy an hour later. It wasn't about a fancy diet or following some trend. It was just about being honest, what makes me feel better and what makes me feel worse. When I cleaned up what I was putting in, the fog started to clear. The afternoon crashes got shorter, then less frequent, then mostly gone. I wasn't fighting myself anymore, and that freed up energy for actual living. Your body at 83 is not the same body it was at 40. Feed it accordingly. Habit number 4, nighttime light disruption. I'll be straight with you. This next one embarrassed me a little because it was so simple and I missed it for so long. For years, my evening routine looked like this: dinner, chair, news, tablet, maybe a little scrolling. Then off to bed around 10 or 11, wondering why I couldn't get truly restful sleep. What I didn't understand is that everything I was doing in those evening hours was sending my brain one very clear signal. It's still daytime. Stay alert. Keep going. The light from screens, especially that blue light, tells your brain the sun is still up. And so your brain doesn't begin the nighttime processes it needs to do, the deep cleanup work, the restoration that only happens when things genuinely go dark and quiet. I was going to bed every night with a brain that hadn't been given a chance to prepare for sleep. And so the sleep I was getting wasn't doing the job it should have been doing. I started making a simple change. Screens off after dinner. Not perfect every night, but most nights. I'd sit with a book, or just sit in the quiet, which is actually something I've come to love. The quality of sleep I started getting was noticeably different. I started waking up with a clearer head. Like the difference between looking through a dirty window and a clean one, I didn't need more sleep. I needed my sleep to actually work. And it couldn't work when I was sabotaging it every single night without realizing it. Habit number 5, energy through movement. Here's something that sounds backwards until you try it. When I was most tired, my instinct was to sit down, save what little I had left, rest. And I followed that instinct for years, and it made everything worse. Because here's what I eventually figured out. Energy isn't something you save. It's something you generate. And the way you generate it is by moving. Your body is built to move. It creates its own momentum. When you sit for long periods, everything slows down. The circulation, the metabolism, the mood. You don't feel like moving because you haven't been moving. And the less you move, the less you feel like moving. And that spiral goes in one direction. I had to force myself to break it. I started small, genuinely small. 5 minutes of walking around the block. That's all I asked of myself at first. But that 5 minutes told my body, we're still in this. We're still active. And slowly, things started to shift. The walks got longer. The energy started to follow the movement instead of the other way around. I walk every day now, not fast, not far by some people's standards, but every day. And those walks are the best thing I do for myself. Don't wait until you feel like moving. You will never feel like it if you wait. Move first. The feeling follows. Habit number 6, outdated self-image. This one hits differently than the others. This one is about the inside. For a long time, I was exhausted by something I couldn't quite name. And what it turned out to be was this. I was still trying to be the man I was 30 years ago, still measuring myself against what I could do, what I looked like, what I was capable of back then, still carrying the expectations, mine and other people's, from a chapter of life that was already finished. That's an enormous amount of energy to spend on something that simply doesn't exist anymore. There's a kind of freedom that only comes when a man decides to stop competing with his past self. When you look at who you actually are right now, at this age, with this body, with this particular season of life, and you say, this is enough, I am enough, right here. I'm not talking about giving up. I'm talking about something almost the opposite of that. It takes real strength to let go of an identity that no longer fits, to stop trying to prove something to people who aren't even watching. When I stopped carrying that old version of myself around, I felt it physically. A weight came off my shoulders. Energy I had been spending on performance came back to me. At 83, I know who I am, and that clarity is one of the most energizing things a man can have. Habit number 7, missing sense of purpose. And this last one. This is the one that was running underneath everything else the whole time. For a stretch of years after I stopped working, after the kids were grown and the house got quieter, I had no mission, nothing pulling me forward. I had things to do, chores, errands, routines, but nothing that made me think, I can't wait for tomorrow. And what I didn't understand at the time is that your brain actually needs that. It needs a reason to stay on. When there's nothing pulling you forward, the brain starts to wind down. It starts shutting off the lights in rooms it doesn't think you need anymore. And you feel that in your body as exhaustion, as flatness, as that gray, shapeless feeling that some people mistake for old age. Finding this channel, having a reason to sit down every week and think through something that might actually help somebody, changed me at a level I didn't expect. I started waking up with somewhere to go, even when I never left the house. I had something to say, someone to say it to. Purpose doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to look impressive. It just has to be real, and it has to be yours. A garden you're serious about, a grandchild you're teaching something to, a skill you're finally learning, a conversation you're determined to keep having. It just has to point forward, because the moment you have something you're genuinely moving toward, your whole system responds. The energy comes back. The curiosity comes back. The mornings start to feel different. At 83, I am more engaged with my days than I was at 65. That's not something I expected to say, but it's true. So that's what was draining me. 7 holes in a vessel I didn't even know was leaking. Mental clutter I'd never dealt with. Relationships that cost more than they gave. Food that was quietly fighting my body. Screens that were wrecking my sleep without my knowing it. A body I'd stopped asking to move. An old identity I was still hauling around. And a life that had stopped pointing at anything new. One by one I patched those holes. And what came back? The clarity, the steadiness, the honest-to-goodness energy. I didn't have words for it at first. I still don't, fully. But I show up here every week because I want you to know it's possible. Whatever age you are, whatever you've been blaming the tiredness on, it is worth looking closer. You might not be running out of time. You might just be leaking in places you haven't found yet. If one of these 7 hit home for you, leave me a comment. Tell me which one. I read every single one, and I genuinely want to know where you are. I'm 83. I feel more alive this year than I have in decades. That's not luck. That's a choice. And it's yours to make too. Take care of yourself. I'll see you next time.